Okay, we are ready to move on to our final lesson before test time on Friday. Excuse me. Parallel and perpendicular lines and equations of those lines and the slopes of those lines. In your textbook, page 343 will help us with that. For our lesson today, our first video, we're talking about parallel and perpendicular lines and their slopes. First of all, what are parallel and perpendicular lines? Do you remember? Hopefully, you have said parallel lines are lines that will never touch, like railroad tiles, the things the trains go on, like the lines on the edges of the road. Parallel lines. Perpendicular lines. Hopefully you said they are lines that intersect and form a right angle. Okay? We're going to talk about if you would have a graph that had lines, two lines on it, and they were parallel, or two lines on it and they were perpendicular. Let's look at parallel lines on the graph. First of all, what are some things you notice about these parallel lines? Okay, Nathan, yes. We have a well, I didn't calibrate. We have a y-intercept of +3 on the top line. And it looks like a y-intercept of -3 on the bottom line. Okay? So their y-intercepts are the opposite of each other. I would agree with that. What is this thing? Saturday night, and neither one of us really want to work hard tonight, huh? Okay. Anyway, you can see that the y-intercept of the top line is at 3, and the y-intercept of the bottom line is at -3. What do you notice about the steepness of the line? Do they appear to be, I don't want to erase. Do they appear to be at the same, there we go, the same steepness? So we have 3, -3. They appear to have the same steepness, which means they would have the same what? Yes, Eric, the same slope. So let's pick a point. Let's start at, let me erase these so we can see them a little better. Let's start here, and we'll go to here. Up, 1, 2, over 1, 2, 3, 4. So 2/4 or 1/2. Okay, let's start here, and let's go again, not to here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3 over 6. Are both of those slopes equivalent to 1/2? Yes. So parallel lines will have the same slope. So we look at our notes. Equation of parallel lines. Parallel lines equal same slope. Parallel lines will have the same slope. How many of you remember the song Skip to Maloo? Whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go back over here. Parallel lines have the same slope. How are we going to remember this? You know skip to Maloo, skip to Maloo. We're going to do it with parallel lines. Are you ready? Parallel lines have the same slope. Parallel lines have the same slope. Parallel lines have the same slope. And never will they meet. Okay? So parallel lines will have the same slope. Always, always, always. What about perpendicular lines? Okay, we said perpendicular lines form a right angle. So the slopes of perpendicular lines have the negative reciprocal, which means you take the slope, you flip it, and you make it its opposite. Okay? Let's scroll down here to perpendicular lines. Negative reciprocal for slope. Okay, which means if my slope is 2/3, I'm going to flip that 3/2 and make it the opposite, or negative. Okay? How can we remember this? How many of you know the song Peanut Butter and Jelly? Here we go. Perpendicular, right angle. Perpendicular, right angle. First you take the slope and you flip it. You flip it, then you take the slope and make it opposite. Perpendicular, right angle. Okay, you flip it and you make it opposite. Let's look at these two. Before we go back to our notes, write an equation of a line that is parallel to the following. Parallel lines have the same slope. So y equals 4x, same slope, minus 7. Okay? How about the next one? What do you think, Lila? Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 3. Absolutely. Because parallel lines have the same slope and never will they meet. Perpendicular. How about perpendicular to the following? Perpendicular. First you take the slope. Here's my slope. And we flip it. Oh my goodness. It's not a fraction. So y equals 4/1x plus 2. So we take the slope and we flip it. Y equals 1/4x. And we make it the opposite. And what do you want the y-intercept to be? 3. Excellent. Y equals negative 1/4 x plus 3 will be perpendicular to y equals 4x plus 2. How about y equals negative 2/3 x minus 1? First you take the slope and you flip it. 3/2x, and then you make it opposite. It was negative, so it's going to be positive. And we can even leave it minus 1. It can have the same y-intercept. Then we're going to have perpendicular lines. Okay? Let's go back to our note sheet. And let's determine if these two equations will give us parallel lines. Remember, parallel lines have the same slope. So this is in y-intercept form. I can identify the slope of 3/4. I don't know the slope of this equation, so what could I do? Excellent, Justin. I can put it in y-intercept form. Let's add 6x. Now I have 8y equals 6x minus 24. Okay? Now what? Divide by 8. Everything. So my y-intercept equation becomes y equals 6/8. 6/8 simplifies to 3/4 x minus 3. Parallel lines have the same slope. Do these two equations have the same slope? Yes. Therefore, they are parallel. Okay? Writing equations of parallel lines. What if I have an equation of a line, y equals 3x plus 9, and I want it to be, this line contain this point and be parallel to this line. Parallel lines have the same slope. So my slope, and I have the slope and I have the point. What formula am I going to use? Chloe, point slope form. So y minus y1, which is negative 6. So y plus 6 equals 3 times the quantity, x minus 2. Now if I want to put it in slope-intercept form, I can distribute and simplify. So y plus 6 equals 3x minus 6. Subtract 6 from both sides. Y equals 3x minus 12. This line will contain the point 2, negative 6, and it will be parallel to y equals 3x plus 9. How do we know that it's parallel? Because parallel lines have the same slope, and both of these lines have a slope of 3. Okay? Let's determine if lines are perpendicular. I want to make sure that this is the last part before my video 2. Absolutely. Okay. So perpendicular lines, the negative or the opposite reciprocal. So let's look at these two lines. Y equals negative 2x plus 6, and the opposite of x plus 2y equals 8. This is already in slope-intercept form. Let's make this one in slope-intercept form. 2y equals x plus 8, because I added x to both sides. Divide by 2. Divide all terms by 2. So in y-intercept form, y equals 1/2 x plus 4. Are these lines perpendicular? Perpendicular. First you take the slope and you flip it. 2 over 1 becomes 1 over 2. Then you take the slope and make it opposite. Is this opposite? Yes. Therefore, these two lines are perpendicular. Last little tidbit. Writing equations for perpendicular lines. Okay? What if I have a line with the slope of 3/4 x plus 1? Okay? I want a perpendicular line with this point, 1/8. Since I have the slope, and I know that for a perpendicular line, my slope needs to be the opposite reciprocal. The reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. The opposite of positive 3/4 is negative. So there's my slope. Now I have a point, meaning I'm going to use point slope. So y minus y1 equals my slope times x minus x1. So distribute y minus 8 equals negative 4/3 x plus a negative and a negative positive 4/3. Okay? Add 8 to both sides. Then y equals negative 4/3 x plus 9 1/3. These lines will be perpendicular because their slopes have been flipped and the opposite. That concludes video 1.